On this episode, Andy and Travis pay tribute to the greatest American hero who's ever lived. That's right, shut your butts, cause it's time to pound some cunt. Welcome to the road home from Macgruber.
Hey folks, Andy here. Before we get into this, I just wanted to mention that I made a ridiculous error. This episode was recorded in May of 2020, and Macgruber came out in 2010, not 2009, which I repeatedly say in the episode. So I fucked that up. I'm sorry. I guess I'll shut my butt. Enjoy the episode. All right, folks, welcome back to the Road Home on Film, or this time it's the Road Home from Macgruber. My name's Andy, coming to you live to tape from the Road Home from Wrestling World Headquarters of the world. And today, it's the triumphant return. He's back, and this time it didn't take 3 years. Travis, what's up, buddy?
Hello, I'm recovering because you said the Road Home from Macgruber. I was not prepared for that, so I've been trying to stifle my laughter. I am wonderful. I'm so excited to talk about Macgruber.
Now, Travis, you also have a podcast, right? It's called the Wrestle Special, and it is a unique podcast. Can you describe it in one or two sentences?
I'll do my best. It's a wrestling podcast that's sometimes about pro wrestling and sometimes not. I feel like I'm going to say like 75% of the time not about wrestling, right? Would you say that that's right?
Well, I would say that if an episode is 100%, then yes, you're always talking about wrestling, but of that, God, it's so hard to describe. But yes, you're 25% of it at all times, at least, is wrestling. However, yes. Whenever, let's say a sentence is said on the, let's break it down a little further, a little micro, is that if a sentence is said on the Wrestle Special, 25% of that sentence is about wrestling, and the other 75 is about who the fuck knows what.
Yes, it could be any number of things. Horse racing, jellyfish, jelly donuts. I mean, that's 75% of that sentence. So horse racing, jellyfish, jelly donuts, wrestling. That's the best way I can describe my podcast.
It's a great show. You've been on before, but I just, always want to remind folks of this because you never know. It is the 10-year anniversary of Macgruber, so there's a chance that we may pick up some new listeners just for the simple fact that someone's looking for a review of the movie Macgruber.
Absolutely. 10 years. I was shocked when you told me that.
Yeah, it turns out that Macgruber was released in May of 2009, so this is a decade anniversary. It's also Memorial Day, and so we had to pay tribute to the greatest American hero of all time, Macgruber.
Yes, Macgruber!
Travis, what's your history with Macgruber?
So that's why it was so hard for me to think it's been 10 years. So I know I'd seen it, but going into rewatching it, I was excited to rewatch it because I barely remembered it. Most of my experience was I'm a big Office guy, so I've rewatched The Office more times than I can count. And at one point, Michael's Halloween costume is Macgruber. And he's doing this. He's like, "What's up, Macgruber?" What? Nothing. And he's like his costume is Macgruber, and he goes Macgruber, and that's why I'm directly ripping off Michael Scott doing Macgruber. So I've always wanted to go back and revisit it, and this was when you said, "Hey, I think I found this. I can't believe I forgot that there were a bunch of wrestlers in Macgruber. Let's watch it for the show." I'm like, I'm so fucking in because I've been meaning to watch it, and I was blown away. I'm 33. 10 years ago, I would have been 23. And I just don't think I appreciated it as much back then as I do now because it is just absolutely phenomenal.
We were talking a little bit before we started recording, and I mentioned that it's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. And, this may be sacrilege to some, but to me, I put it up there with the Young Frankensteins and the, what was the other movie? Pee-wee's Big Adventure. That's kind of my holy trinity of funny movies. And I'm sure I'm missing other ones that I think are hilarious too. But I've always love this movie. And, ever since it came out, I think I rented it from Blockbuster back in the day and was like, holy fucking shit. I've owned several copies of it that have disappeared over time, and then I rebuy it. It's just one of those ones that's always around. Now, before we get into the cast and the 3 million things we're going to talk about here, I mean, good Lord, this might be a long one, folks. And,
yeah, strap in.
I mean, because Jesus, there's so much I want to say about this movie. What is this movie spoofing? I mean, it's a spoof, right? This is it's a spoof movie, but it has more of a storyline than your typical kind of scary movie or whatever spoof movies that come out nowadays. What would you say that this is a spoof of?
It's tough because there's some buddy cop elements that they're borrowing from, and then a lot of like action movies, like 80s action movies, even 90s action movies. And it makes me, so that's why I kind of went back to that. I didn't know I could really appreciate, if I really appreciated it when I was 23, because at that point, I don't think I had seen many older action movies or even appreciated camp or knew what camp was, like why I would think something was over the top funny. Like obviously I got physical humor, I grew up watching Family Matters, Steve Urkel, all that kind of stuff, Happy Gilmore, all that kind of stuff, right? But I don't know what it was with this movie initially where I just didn't get it, and I think it's because it was such an obvious ripoff of so many different like stereotypical 80s action heroes. Like there's some definite Lethal Weapon in there, like big time. Yes. And it just obviously Macgruber is a takeoff on MacGyver, and they really don't touch on it. They like touch on it like 3 times. I mean, mostly about like him making gadgets out of things, but it really just seems like they were like, what should we call this? Macgruber. We'll have to make sure we have some kind of MacGyver reference, but there's so many different elements of that prototypical action star that is in this, and the one-liners are a big thing, and just the why over the top death scenes, like it is. That's why it's so good, and that's why you can only appreciate it, I think, if you have an appreciation for that era of film and that type of film.
You're right. One other element that is certainly in this is Roadhouse. The main character in Roadhouse rips throats. He rips somebody's throat out, I think, a couple times in that movie. So that's part of this as well. But yes, it's a spoof on 80s or 90s, action movies, Roadhouse, MacGyver, and stuff like that. And also it's based on an SNL sketch. So this is one of the best. Another movie I put up there with one of my funniest ones I've ever seen is The Blues Brothers, which is probably the best Saturday Night Live based movie in my opinion. This is up there too, believe it or not. And this is a Saturday Night Live skit where basically, what would happen is Macgruber and his 2, people that are helping him, which we'll get to who that is, but usually it's a celebrity of someone, whoever was the guest that week on Saturday Night Live. I saw a couple sketches with Ryan Phillippe, who's in this movie, as well as Charles Barkley and various other people. And Macgruber would try to save the day, but his kind of incompetence and his inability to respect those around him kind of makes it basically everything goes awry. All the skits would be like, Macgruber would be like, oh my God, there's this bomb that's about to go off, and but we're stuck in the bottom of a submarine. And then the lady would say, Macgruber, the way that looks, we only have 20 seconds left. And then he would just kind of start being an asshole, and then there'd be an explosion, and that was it. That's the skit, right? So, and they did it all the time, and I loved the skit. I thought it was so funny and stupid, and we can't get into this, though, without talking about some of the folks that are in it. So,
yeah.
Real quick before we get to that, though, I would like to play a little game. Just take a second.
Okay.
The budget, what would you guess the budget for Macgruber was?
Ooh.
Not a high-budget movie, I will tell you that much.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, the actors alone, I think, would have been, man, I don't know, $10 million?
It's a $10 million budgeted movie. Very good.
Wow.
Now, how much? I don't know how you pulled that out of your ass. Good job. So.
Me either. I was gonna lowball it lower than that, and I was like, there's no way it's like a $5 million movie. So I just did the normal double it, see what the fuck happens, and I somehow was right.
How much do you think it pulled in? Now, this would be gross, domestic, all over the world. This is all the money that Macgruber's made up to this point. And I would say that at least 1% of this is from me directly.
You 150 million?
Macgruber is not a popular movie. It made 9.3 million, so it did not make its money back, and that is why we do not have a Macgruber sequel. However,
Are you serious? I did not realize it.
It was it was a big flop, and what most of those Saturday Night Live movies like that around that time were flops. You had the Pat movie and the Stuart Smalley movie and all that crap. None of that made money, and so. It's just one of those things where, this movie is not popular. Most people think it's a piece of shit. They don't know what they're talking about, and we're here to prove them wrong today. But Travis, tell me, about the folks that are in this movie, and we'll see how you thought they did.
So you hit on something kind of right at the top, which is SNL, right? It started as an SNL skit, and you can kind of see that all the way through the movie because it stars Will Forte, who obviously we all know from SNL, but you and I both loved him in Last Man on Earth, which is super sad that got canceled. But he's also in everything.
It's like the same character too, right?
It pretty much is. You're absolutely right. It is pretty much Tandy. Tandy in an action movie that's pretty much. If you like Last Man on Earth, you're gonna love this. But what was really most interesting is that it goes even deeper than just the cast. The director is Jorma. Now I don't know if I say his name correctly. Jorma Taccone. He is of the Lonely Island fame. So he's one of the three guys in Lonely Island, was a writer for SNL, but I didn't realize he directed the movie. So that was kind of a cool connection for me because I've always really appreciated pretty much everything the Lonely Island guys have done. So it was that kind of blew me away. But Kristen Wigg, again, SNL bridesmaid fame, played would you say it the love interest of the movie?
Yes.
Victoria St. Elmo.
All the names are they're not on the nose either. Like all the names are stupid, but they're just like, they're kind of on the cheek and not on the nose, if that makes sense.
Yes.
They're pretty funny.
Absolutely. And I guess I buried the lead there by I mentioned Will Forte, but he's Macgruber. He is Macgruber, and he is phenomenal. Maya Rudolph is in it as I don't even think I brought up or I looked up her name in the film. Casey. That was it. I did write it down. I just wasn't paying attention. But again, that SNL blood runs deep. But she's in it just for a little bit. Ryan Phillippe played Lieutenant Piper, which is would you call him the sidekick?
Yeah.
That definitely.
Yeah, he wants to be the sidekick, and that's kind of his journey in this movie. And his full name is Dixon Piper, by the way, because again, it's not Dickon Cider, it's Dixon Piper, so it's almost on the nose,
Like you said, on the cheek. I like that, on the cheek. But obviously he's best known for. I think I started thinking about it. On his IMDb, it kept coming up that he was like, best known for Crash. But for me, it's like All About Cruel Intentions and I Know What You Did Last Summer. That's what I remember him from. Now, you know this. I was very excited for this next person. Val fucking Kilmer. I forgot he played the villain. Dieter Van Kuntz. And this is probably my favorite gag in the whole movie is that they got away with saying, can I say cunt on this, by the way?
Okay. Cunt, you can say
cunt.
Yeah.
Cunt. Yeah, they got away with saying cunt for the whole movie, like over and over and over again. Let's pound this. Let's go pound some cunt. And it's just, but Dieter Van Kuntz is the head villain, Macgruber's arch nemesis. If you don't know who Val Kilmer is, I don't know how to point you in the right direction, but Top Gun, Tombstone, Ghost in the Darkness, just to name a few. Obviously, Tombstone is one of my favorites, which brings me to Powers Booth, who played Colonel Faith. He played a really good straight guy to Macgruber a lot, which I really appreciated his presence because he just was kind of stone-faced the entire time Macgruber was doing like all of his idiocy, and no, like he seemed to be one of the only people that was not affected by Macgruber's antics. Powers Booth, obviously, another person of Tombstone. I'm just going to only talk about Tombstone.
Before we move on, just real quick, I just want to mention we're not just getting Val Kilmer, we're getting Fat Kilmer, which is a big difference.
Yes.
So that's important. And Val Kilmer is a hilarious actor. You don't see him do comedy very often, but when he does, he's great at it. He's in also one of my favorite spoof movies. It's called Top Secret that stars him. It's the first the Zucker Brothers movie. It's fantastic. If you've never seen that, it's the funniest he's ever been other than this movie. And then Powers Booth, if you watch any Western, he's in it. Guaranteed. He's in it. And he's fantastic. I think my favorite character that he plays is I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, but he is in the HBO Deadwood series, and he plays like him. He's fucking awesome in it. So great.
I've always meant to go back and watch that, but I didn't. So I need to go back and watch that because I really appreciate him.
Really good.
And then really outside, I already mentioned Maya Rudolph. Outside of that, really you get into wrestlers pretty quick, and then you get into Dude. There's literally a guy in the film named Dude. That's the character's name. And then you just get all these other random filler. Henchman number 3. I mean, I left out Val Kilmer's number 1 henchman, even though I liked the guy, Constantine. And really, that's when you start to get into the wrestlers, which is how you were able to shoehorn reviewing Macgruber on a wrestling podcast.
Right.
So very Wrestle Special review.
That's true. Believe it or not, there are a ton of wrestling connections to this that we're going to get into that are like, I kept like peeling the onion back and going further and further. And I was like, oh my God, it's crazy. So yeah, there's a bunch of wrestlers. Tell us who's in this movie that's a pro wrestler.
The first and probably the person that has the most speaking lines, and outside of like group speaking lines, is one Chris Jericho, and he plays Frank Corver. They have a great back and forth when he gets recruited. There's this I know we're going to talk about it, but it's just this phenomenal recruitment montage where he's going to get his team, and his team is all wrestlers, and it is just so good. But it starts out with Chris Jericho and Macgruber talking. Mark Henry plays Tut Beamer, which they're such good. It's almost like A-team names. And that's another thing that I think that they borrow from is A-team.
Yes.
At least in this beginning piece, because some of these names just are so much like even like 70s, 80s television too. So Mark Henry played Tut Beamer. MVP plays Vernon Freedom, which I love. The Great Khali plays Tug Phelps, which might be my favorite. Tug Phelps. Kane plays Tanker Lutz. And this is maskless Kane. So this was 10 years ago. This would have been how soon after was Kane Unmasked that was this filmed? Was this like
I don't know.
See No Evil? Yeah. And then finally, the Big Show is playing Brick Hughes in this film, which is again another great action movie name, Brick Hughes.
Now, I'm searching stuff on the internet. I'm trying to find out more and more I can about Macgruber because I've never really researched this movie before. And I found something very interesting. Macgruber was on Raw. Which I didn't know because I didn't watch Raw in 2009. But Macgruber and Victoria, they were on Raw and they were in character, right? So, which is funny because they're pimping the movie, but they're pimping the movie like it's a real movie about Macgruber's life, right? And they're in a couple scenes or kind of segments. One of them is they run into Chris Jericho in the hallway, and Jericho is like, yeah, I heard that they're going to make a sequel just about my character Frank. And that he did such a good job, and Macgruber's kind of upset by that. But, basically Macgruber is in a match against Vladimir Kozlov. And so he asked Jericho for advice, and he ends up going to this match. And I mean, they actually have a match, and they start, basically Kozlov gets him in kind of a bear hug. It's a little awkward. And then Ryan Phillippe, kind of makes a run in, and he gets on the mic and says, "Listen, I've talked to the people upstairs, and it turns out we're going to make this a handicap match. Macgruber's brother, Carl Gruber, is going to be the other guy, and it's fucking great Khali dressed up like Macgruber who comes in and squashes Kozlov, and they celebrate in the ring. That is real. That's on you.
Okay.
100% real.
I'm sure as a wrestling fan, if I was watching that and if I was like, if I'm just going to take myself out of wrestling and like this version of myself and plop him in 2010, I'm sure I would have been upset that this was happening to wrestling, but man, that's wrestling to me right there. That is, I know I probably would have been pissed about it at the time, but with the way you're describing it to me, if that just happened on a random Raw now, I would be like, oh, I'm all in. This is fucking weird. I'm all the way in. You have Great Khali cosplaying Macgruber. Yes.
Which plays into the movie too, because stuff like that happens in the movie. So,
yes.
I mean, they actually kind of worked in some stuff. It was good. There was a couple other segments I didn't have time to watch, but so that's out there. So feel free to look up all that and everything, and it's pretty great. But well, Travis, do we have any more preambling to do before we get into this thing?
I don't think so. That's the cast, unless you have something out of nowhere that I didn't realize. Like
if so, it's going to be in the notes somewhere. So
cool. That's where I'm at, because I've got a lot of notes too. Like, just mostly what the problem is that I just wrote down a bunch of things that made me laugh. Like, which is like just like it turns out it's just a bunch of quotes that. So it's like. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be a full podcast of just me going, no fucking way, and you be.
Well, it's funny because most movie review podcasts will not touch comedies because it is subjective, and if you think it's funny, it's the best movie ever, and if you don't, it's not. However, and it kind of devolves into just people quoting stuff, but we don't give a fuck. We're not scared of that here.
Yeah,
we'll touch whatever.
Definitely.
It's got wrestling in it, and it's funny. We're going to talk about it. So here we are. Well, this movie opens in a way that is just fucking tickles my fancy like you wouldn't believe. And I know this is stupid, but you're watching a piece of shit movie or a movie spoofing a piece of shit movie when the movie starts with white text on a black screen. And that's what we get here. It says it's the mountains in eastern Siberia, all right? And that's where we are. It's a fucking bloodbath, Travis. There's dead soldiers laying everywhere. This badass-looking pair of hombres are responsible. And black SUVs pull up. And who is it? It's fucking Fat Kilmer, Dieter von Kuntz. And he's there to get a missile and kills a man who's begging him not to take the missile.
This was like the first like one-liner, like it's like what, a minute in, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I don't speak Russian." Like it's the first one-liner of the movie, and it's such a great way to start it because it sets the tone, and you're like, okay, what have I walked into? Because I had forgotten Val Kilmer was in the movie. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I literally, my first note is Val Kilmer! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. I'm looking at my notes. That was the first note that I made. So you're
running around your living room fist pumping 2 minutes into the movie.
Awesome. I was like, okay, this is it's all downhill from here. Val Kilmer's in this fucking film. Luckily, I was wrong because it was an uphill. Yes.
Now, our title sequence here, our credit sequence, is basically it's files being filed through, and then we also get to see Macgruber doing like 80s stuff, like playing a saxophone in a warehouse, or tanning, for example, in the warehouse. And here are the lyrics to the Macgruber theme song for the movie. Macgruber, making life-saving inventions out of household materials. Macgruber, getting in and out of ultra-sticky situations. Macgruber, the guy's a fucking genius. Macgruber, he made a fucking movie. Macgruber. It's fantastic. I love it. It's so funny. I mean, there's highlights of things in these files. It's like, genius, great lover. Things like it's
Yes.
just fucking
Like,
awesome.
well, everything else is redacted around it. Like there's files and it looks like everything else is redacted. It's just like, yeah, like it's a great lover. That's for some reason that's the thing that stuck out to me too, was great lover. Maybe because of the couple scenes we get later, which probably my favorites.
He's also sharpening a thumbtack and it glows red, and he he's wearing goggles and like shakes his head. Yes, that's what I wanted. We see him like open up like a thing that you would put like knives and weapons in, but it's all full of just like a piece of string and a little wire, and it's all just full of fucking household materials that he makes these inventions out of. So, well, our next scene, we are in Rio Bamba, Ecuador. And we meet Lieutenant Dixon Piper, played by Ryan Phillippe, and Colonel Jim Faith, played by Powers Booth, as they drive through a mission in a military jeep. All right. Now, this is the quintessential beginning to many, many movies, where it's like this character he's had a problem in the past, and so he's kind of gone off on his own, right?
Yeah.
So
he's off the grid. He
right,
couldn't
there
be
you go.
contained by the government. He's off the grid.
It's way better than what I said. So now Macgruber has been dead for 10 years, and they approach from behind a prostrate Macgruber. It's like he's praying at a shrine, and he immediately knows it's Jim and does a fucking backflip to get to his feet. And I don't know if you noticed this, but this little sound effect is hidden throughout the movie. There is just like a wow wow, like a bobcat growl that just shows up around the movie, and it happens when he jumps in the air for some reason.
I did not notice that. Can we get a bobcat growl counter? Like I want
There's
a
at least
bobcat growl counter. Okay,
Every
you got it.
time-
Okay, good.
Every time there's an explosion, and every time, and like in this part right here, so there's always this little bobcat sound in the mix. It's really funny. Piper runs down Mac's accomplishments. He's like 6 tours in Iraq, 3 tours in Zimbabwe. He has what's funny too is he has all these medals, but the one that sticks out the most is 16 Purple Hearts. So he got fucked up 16 times.
Tight end at the University of Texas, El Paso. Like that was like so I'm going to make a confession. I didn't end up doing it, but I was going to try to introduce you somewhere as Drucifer, the number 1 podcaster out of Spain, tight end out of University of Cincinnati, runner-up in Mr. Cowboy 1988, and just throw a bunch of shit in there. And I didn't end up doing it, but I was going to spoof the spoof and do that scene, because that was, I think, that moment. And this is why this is going to be a problem, because we're going to break every fucking scene down microscopically. That it was at that moment I'm like, okay, like if I didn't get it before, I definitely got it now. Like this is amazing. This is already brilliant.
That Mr. Cowboy competition was really hard too, by the way. I just want to throw that out there. So, we already know that Piper knows all about Macgruber. Everyone knows about him. He's famous, among military types. And Macgruber says he can't help. Basically, he just walks up to Jim. He's like, Jim, whatever it is, the answer's no. And that's the movie right there. It's these stupid, just conversations between idiots. That's what it is. It's fucking awesome. I love it. He gives the military guys a tour explaining that this is his home now. And these little kids fuck with him. They steal his wallet. These little kids run by and steal his wallet. And he's like, those kids, they'll bring it back. And you see translated, up yours, Macgruber.
Yes. Which again is spoofing like everything, like all of these so many movies where the hero's retired and he's helping out on a beach somewhere, like a deserted island. He's helping out the villagers. In this case, he's at a monastery, and it's just so good. It's so good.
Well, and he doesn't belong there, and everyone probably hates him. So
yes.
The thing is that he says, "Oh, this is my home now." They all fucking hate him. The little kids are stealing from him and making fun of him. So It's awesome. So then they have this like super clear. All right, Jim explains the X5 warhead that was stolen at the beginning of the movie by Dieter von Kuntz, but he doesn't mention Kuntz first. He just says that's it. And, it basically, Macgruber says, haven't I given enough for my country? Haven't I already paid enough? We'll find out why he thinks that. They have this super cliche back and forth about Macgruber's dark past and why, he needs to help. He says it's not about Casey, all right? And we'll learn later who Casey is. But Max still won't help until Jim mentions it's Kuntz. And, and he thinks about it, but he still turns the colonel down, right? Travis, I want to tell you all about this dream sequence here. So Macgruber has a restless night of sleep. He dreams about his wedding to Casey, who is his dead wife. He's a widower, it turns out. And tell me what happens here.
So he's dreaming about their wedding day, and he's looking into Maya Rudolph's eyes, and it's just the greatest day ever. And you see a limo pull up outside of, is it like a dojo? Like it looks like a dojo to me for some, like he's getting married at a dojo.
I just thought it was just like a, I don't know, a gazebo type thing, but
maybe I just wanted it to be a dojo. and they're talking, and it's, you're basically viewing it from Macgruber's point of view. And it clips to Val Kilmer in this limo with a hand on a finger on a button, and he just mouths, "Fuck you," Macgruber. And he presses the button, and you just see flames. Maya Rudolph kind of bursts into flames, and then he wakes up screaming in the night in a cold sweat.
And that ends a lot of scenes. There's a lot of scenes where Macgruber's just screaming into the heavens, and we have a crane shot looking down and the scene just cuts. So that's how that scene ends. Also, I just got to mention the bomb is in the preacher's Bible, by the way. And this is also a spoof of the movie King of New York with, who's in that? Christopher Walken. He just basically does that same thing in the movie, only it's a funeral instead of a wedding. It's pretty awesome. That's a movie that's supposed to be serious, but it's fucking so funny because shit like that keeps happening in it. It's awesome. Let's see.
That. I'll have to check that out.
I mean, maybe it's not good. So this is just awesome. So we get the gear up scene, right? Because this dream has changed his mind. He's gotta pound some cunt, and he arrives in the pouring rain at a graveyard, and it's his own grave, and and we get like this gear up thing. It's a quick cut where he puts on all these clothes, basically that he digs up the grave, and inside the coffin are his clothes and like all of his stuff. And so he puts on all the clothes just soaking wet. I mean, like there's like, like he snaps his underwear, his tighty whities, and it's completely sopping wet. You can see right through it and see his ass. It's hilarious. And then he looks at the heavens and, and he screams. And he also has a clippers, and he cuts his hair, and he gets some car keys with a Lucky Rabbit's foot. It's fucking amazing, right? Again, like this is what, okay, I'm going to say this for the first time, but I'm not going to talk about it here. This is like the brilliance behind this movie is that it's so gratuitous, is that it circles back into nuanced. And I don't know if I've had that many films that were like so over the top, they somehow make their way full circle back to understated. And because there's a lot of things that will pass over your head if you're not paying attention, because there's so much like butt humor and screaming and just like you said, two idiots having a conversation, part of it. But there's just the original gag is not always the gag. It's like layered, and it's just phenomenal. Well, and they don't do sight gags like you would see in a normal spoof movie. A normal spoof movie, there would be something going on in the forefront that's funny, and in the background there's like a sight gag going on,
yes.
and stuff like that. They do sight gags, but they do it in a way that perpetuates the storyline, and we'll get to one of those here in a few. Those are really well done in this movie. So we cut to Washington, D.C. It's the Pentagon, and Macgruber arrives in the wrong room. like we see him like dramatically bust open a door, like where the fuck's cunt? I'm gonna pound it, and he's like in the lunchroom or something.
Everyone looks up like, what?
They really play with that a lot. They play with the tempo of the movie. There's a lot of editing jokes like that where, they're every time you're going up a climbing action of the plot, they just kind of sideline it with these jokes and stuff. But you don't stop moving. They're quick cutting. So so anyway, yeah, he basically then he finds the right room. All right. And let's see here. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped something here. I have a note here that says, Travis, will you describe Macgruber? Like, what's he look like? We need to tell people what he looks like.
Yeah. It's, I wouldn't call it, it's not really a mullet, is it? His hair?
Oh, certainly.
It's not like it's not, okay. I think when I say mullet, I think of Joe Dirt mullet. It's not a Joe Dirt mullet. It's more of it's a shorter mullet. There's still business in the front, party in the back.
It's a Richard Dean Anderson mullet. That's what it is. It's from MacGyver.
MacGyver, yes, exactly. That's good. That's the best way to explain it. It was right in front of my face. But he's wearing jeans and he's got this vest, and it's like, it's almost like he went and like shopped at like an LL Bean for all of his clothes, or like Eddie Bauer or something, because it's like kind of like flannelly, and he's got like those you were mentioning when he was gearing up, and all of his clothes are buried in his grave. He's got jeans, but he also has those hiking shoes that they're not really they're not boots, they're not hiking boots, but there's those hybrid things, and you know what I'm talking about if you see them. They're like, it's those things. And he just looks like a supreme goofball and not intimidating at all.
No, yes, that's very much key. He looks like a guy that you would be like, well, that guy's a douchebag. See you later. Well, we get a rundown of like what the military knows about Macgruber, and he shows some severe shittiness to Dix and Piper, which is a running theme. And this is where some of the funniest one-liners and kind of jokes come from here, which we'll talk about here in a second. Macgruber says he's ready. He wants to go pound some cunt. He said, let's go pound some cunt. And the mission is that they need to get the launch codes for the X5 missile before Kunt can. And Kunt has assembled a team of nasties. And they run down all these nasties that they all have silly names too. I didn't write any of those down, though. And Macgruber says that he will put together his own team. He refuses to let Piper join the team. And this is where we get his... You think your shit don't stink, but it does. It stinks like shit. And he headbutts Piper in the face for no reason whatsoever. What do you think about this relationship between him and Piper, and where does it come from? Why does Macgruber hate this guy so much?
I think it's definitely playing on the trope of being like, I work alone. I don't need any help from anyone. I do things my way. I go where I want to go, kind of the action hero trope. So I really think they're playing that up. And I don't think it's anything other than like it just seems like Macgruber became a special agent because of these action movies he grew up watching. So that's just how he treats people in his normal life. And it doesn't work like that. Dixon Piper is a legit like badass. He's not some goofball, right? And he's treating him like just like you said, it really harkens back to the SNL skits where he's just like being a complete cunt to him.
Well, and it also reminds me of the Point Break scene where it's like, oh, we got a rookie here, young, dumb, and full of cum. It's like that's the kind of shit that he's saying to Piper, and Piper's just standing there like, hey, man, I just want to help you. And he fucking headbutts him, So, so the other thing, too, if we want to go even further, is that Macgruber knows that he doesn't know what he's doing deep down. And we'll get to that because the first part of the movie, we think, oh, Macgruber's, he knows what he's doing. And then we realize pretty quick he doesn't have a fucking idea, and he knows that he doesn't have a clue. So he's extremely insecure. I mean, he's one of the most insecure characters to ever be in a movie.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm thinking of one specific thing right now, and I don't know if it's the same thing you're thinking of, but I'm thinking of one specific thing that just really highlights the insecurity. And like you said, we'll get to it.
There's so many of them. It's awesome. Well, we get rock and roll playing. It's like a bluesy rock as we get another quick cut montage of Macgruber getting into his car. And his car is a fucking Miata. It's a red Miata with a luggage rack. I learned through my research that the luggage rack was not written into the script. It's just, in fact, when asked about it, Will Forte said, "Do they not all come with luggage racks?" He thought they all came.
I think they all. I would have guessed they all came with luggage racks too.
I mean, we all know about that luggage rack either way. So, but what's funny is, again, this is a funny editing joke, is that it's all this like just fucking rock and roll. We're like, oh my God, he's getting in this badass car, because we just see a red sports car. We don't see what it is. And then he turns on the radio. He slides the radio in. We'll talk about the radio joke. And then Rosanna by Toto starts playing, and it's like soft rock, and then he drives away. Tell me about the radio joke. And Travis, do you remember folks that did this?
I do, and that was something that it wasn't lost on me, but I probably didn't appreciate it as much as somebody that probably had to constantly do that back in, and that it kind of harkens back to him standing out like a sore thumb, and really being, instead of just obviously having the mullet, but also being from a bygone era, right? He brings this radio with him everywhere because he's afraid it's going to get stolen. And I actually remember, I guess it would have been still in my high school years, you could pop off the radio face, so you didn't have to take the whole radio out. So, and it was like when it was digital and all that stuff, but he takes the whole radio out every time he leaves his car. And is that something you had experience with?
Yes. So when I was younger, basically how this works for younger people that don't understand this is that, when like car stereos started getting expensive and started being a thing that people might invest in their car, then, people were stealing them all the time, and so it was much harder to steal the speakers than to just pop out the radio, like the unit, and take it with you. So people would break in and take them. So eventually they became easier to remove so that you could like buy a little strap and carry it around with you so no one could take it. Meanwhile, they could very easily just steal your fucking car. I mean, I don't know what, it doesn't prevent someone from stealing your car. Just the radio. It's the dumbest thing ever, and it's a deep cut, and something that when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, that is awesome. I remember idiots walking around with those things. When I was younger, we had one radio in a car that did that, but we didn't take it out because who the fuck was going to steal our radio, And
that's what I'm talking about, the nuance. Like, that's a joke to your point that, I mean, even in what 2013? No, it came out. Wait, no,
2009.
2009. Okay. So why did I think that it was 2023 for a second? Holy shit. This quarantine has really fucked with me. But even then, I don't think I would have. I think it would have been lost on me. But that's the brilliance of this movie, is they still included it anyway, knowing that not everyone was going to get the joke.
It's pretty awesome. Well, so Macgruber arrives at a gym to the tune of Baker Street. He listens to only soft rock, which is awesome, because I really like soft rock, by the way. And he removes the radio to bring it with him, and we walk up on a supple, strong, muscular Chris Jericho working out. And this is fucking hilarious. He's doing like the bench press, and there's somebody spotting him, and he's like, no, I got it. And Macgruber walks up, and he's like, just like Frank, always trying to do stuff on his own. And I don't know if you wrote this down or anything, but this little interaction between them is pretty great, right?
Yeah, I didn't write it down, but I mostly remember the kind of the back and forth of like, oh, I'm gonna need you. Or he's like, oh, you're retired. He's like, no, I'm gonna need you now. And he makes a dick joke, and they just commiserate about dick jokes. He's like, oh, I love hearing your dick jokes. I love telling them. It's just I'll listen. That's what it is. And that was really what stuck out to me were the dick jokes. Obviously, I mean, what else is going to stick out here?
Yeah, well, I mean, Gruber says he doesn't have to work out because it's a workout enough to carry his giant penis around. So
his python, yeah.
Right. Awesome. So then we get a team build montage, and this is awesome because he basically visits different places and recruits these teams, and this means he walks up and smiles knowingly at them. That's it. That's all that happens, right? But we get some jokes here. So we get one joke that, it's a little off. But so MVP. Wait. First we see Mark Henry. He's a construction worker, right?
Yes, jackhammering.
That's right. And then MVP is a homeless vet, I guess. He's on the street and he just drops a grenade in his little homeless cup.
What was and then Great Khali is next. What was he doing? He's the
welding.
one I don't remember.
He was welding. Yes.
Okay.
And then
if you can imagine, Kane's throwing knives at like a gun range.
Yeah, and Macgruber walks out. There's people firing guns downrange right next to him. He throws a knife because he's all about knives, I guess. We never get that far with him, and then Macgruber walks out from behind the fucking target, like, brother, you're downrange in a fucking firing squad. Like, you might as well get killed. And he, smiles knowingly. And then we get the one kind of off joke here where Big Show is a mechanic, right? And he just starts making out with this dude that brings him a cup of lemonade. And then Macgruber's not cool with that. He's like, nah. And you see him like scratching his name out. But Travis, what do you think about Big Show's passionate kiss that he had with this guy? It was awesome.
I think it's great, and I at the same time, it's like that's why I wrestled with this section, because I was like, why did they have to include like that part about him? Because Big Show kisses his boyfriend, and then Macgruber crosses his name off the list and doesn't recruit him, right? For that reason, I'm like, why would you even do that? But I mean, big ups to Big Show being in character, yes, and showing that there's nothing wrong with that. And that's where I was like, I think that they're trying to show the dichotomy of how backwards Macgruber is. Yes. And that's where I kind of landed on, is that I don't think they were trying to be not couth and insensitive by putting that in there. It just goes to show how much of an asshole Macgruber is. At least that's how I interpreted it. How about you?
There's one way you can fix this, okay? You can make it okay, and that is just have a post-credit sequence, or at the end there's a wedding at the end. Have Big Show at the wedding with his man, and in that way we know that the decision to not involve him in all this was good for him. You know what I mean? So his characteristic of being gay actually not only does it help him, with his life, and it's who he wants to be and everything, but it also keeps him from getting killed in the scenario. So I think that would be a way to fix this and make it a little more up to date. But it is what it is. It's in the movie. So and then the last name we see on the list is Vicky St. Elmo. It's circled as the team slow-mo walks with guns, looking badass.
So good. So
Macgruber, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, this scene that you're about to describe is one of my favorites, and I don't know why. Like, it just is absolutely one of my favorite scenes. Go ahead.
She's fantastic. She's so funny in this, and part of it is her doing her kind of awkward like gimmick that she usually does. However, in most movies where she's playing that kind of character, she lays it on so thick that it's awful. And in this movie, she actually has other character attributes, and she's, her character is that she is a, lovesick kind of dreamer is what she is, but she's also an expert at explosives or something like that. We never really know why she's on the team, honestly, because what does she do? Nothing.
You're right. We don't know. She's the songwriter of the team.
Correct.
What is that?
So she's singing, like, Macgruber arrives at her house. He walks in, doesn't knock, of course. And that's
what I said. I was like, why do you just walk into people's houses? Like, he just walks in.
And she's singing this cheesy love song that she's written, and it's like, there's like the end, like, punchline part of it is like, she's like, and that's all that matters is 2 kids and me and you. So she wants a family, all she cares about. That's what she's been dreaming about and writing all these songs about. And she sees Macgruber, who she thinks is dead, and she seems a little angry that, that he didn't tell her that he wasn't dead. And she says she doesn't want to join the team because of that, right? Yes. And then we get the reason why. So this is the other part of the wedding that we didn't get to see. Will you tell us about this, Travis?
Yes. So it's I love this part just because it's so in your face. So it shows her as a guest of the wedding, and she's viewing the wedding as sitting from the crowd, and she's smiling, and it clips to the happy couple on stage, and they're looking deep into each other's eyes, and it clips back to Kristen Wigg, and all of a sudden there's this explosion, and just blood splatters all over her face, and she's like, oh, and staring in horror, almost screaming, like just mouth agape at what she's just seen. She's just seen her best friend blow up in front of her, and it's just so in your face. It's amazing.
So she was at the wedding, and this is why and it's not that she's afraid. We learned that she feels obligated to not bang her best friend's almost husband. You know what I mean? That's kind of the reason why, right? But she says she doesn't want to say yes. And, and Macgruber's like, well, if you change your mind, look me up. And he hands her a note. And it just says, in like little kid's handwriting, says, I'm at the Pentagon, right? So, and that's what I was mentioning earlier, where they do sight gags, but they do them in a way that, is actually propelling the story, because now she knows where he's at. It actually works. So we see Kunth at his compound, and he is talking to the X5 rocket. He says, you ever gone to DC before? So he's going to blow up the White House with this fucking rocket at some point, right? Yes. So Max, now this is probably the, turning point. This is the end of Act 1, the beginning of Act 2 for sure. And this is probably one of the greatest scenes in the movie. I mean, Travis, if you want to go for it, please tell me all about this.
So Macgruber, they're sitting in a van with his team, and they're all like hyped up. They're ready to go pound some cunt. I was going to say kick some cunt, but pounding some cunt sounds better. Too. Yeah, doing whatever you want to whatever cunt you want. And they're all hyping each other up, and they're ready to go do this. And Macgruber spots the vehicle coming in, and he knows it's the Colonel, and he says, fuck, the brass is here. I got it. Let me go handle the brass. And he gets out of the car, and the group is chanting, fuck the brass, fuck the brass, because again, that's what you do when you're a renegade band of brothers going to pound some cunt, is you don't want to be told what to do. So he goes up to the SUV, Piper and the Colonel get out, and Colonel wants Piper to go with him again. He basically takes another run. Are you sure you don't want Piper to go with you? And this is where this whole scene is just magical, but you get one of the best back and forths of the whole film. And do you want to say it, or do you want me to? Because I feel like I'm stealing this from you. So Piper's got a Band-Aid on his nose, and Macgruber's like, how's your nose, rookie? And Piper says, it's fine. I just banged it into a giant vagina. And Macgruber goes, so my face is a vagina, huh? Well, I bet you wish your nose was a dick so you could fuck butts. And this is, I think, like, just the movie in a nutshell. Is this scene you could just show somebody this scene, and that would tell you what the movie is. And they go back and forth.
What's good about it too, though, just real quick, is that Ryan Phillippe's character starts to gain a little bit of Macgruber's respect because of how shitty he is to him.
Yes, true. That's a real, and that goes back to the nuance. They're talking about noses being dicks and faces being vaginas. And in all of this, there's nuance of that respect being built there. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm telling you. That's the genius of this film. And roundabout way, we get to Macgruber saying, you can ride in the trunk if you want. Oh, wait, no, you can't. That's where I've packed 2 tons of dynamite that I packed with my own 2 hands. And then in the back of the scene, you see the van with all of the killer stoppers, the team of the WWE wrestlers, all go up in a huge ball of fire. And then Macgruber runs over, and this is just this is the icing. This is the cherry on top. He's running over, and I'm telling you, there's like nothing left. There's like, it's a husk of the SUV. There's no way anybody could survive. But of course, Macgruber's running over, going, "Tug, Tug, you guys okay? Guys, are you Tug? And then he finally just gives up and then does the wail that you were talking about, the screaming crane shot where he's like, ah! And it flips.
It's like a little kid. If, something really, like, I don't know, something like bad happened to a little kid's toy. No. He's just running around. Just call 911. Call 911, And
that's what
Powers Booth and Dixon Piper, they're just no-selling it. They're just standing there looking at him, which is, you got to have these straight characters to, kind of play off, which is awesome.
It was just amazing. It was probably in a movie full of my favorite scenes. This was one of my favorite scenes.
This also shatters all of Macgruber's insecurities. Just are on the stage for everyone to see here, and him losing his shit just shatters his confidence. And we cut straight to Jim's office after the funeral as Macgruber he longingly looks out the window and says it's a fucking asshole of a day. And Jim says that he discusses Mac's use of the F word at the funeral because I guess he gave a eulogy, and he says maybe you couldn't have said the F word as much, and you shouldn't have said fuck. And he's like, well, it's a fucking asshole of a day. And Mac, he thinks he should be dead. So Jim, Powers Booth, he says, you're off the case. And there's a lot of this that happens in the movie. You're off the case. You're on the case.
Yeah.
Right. You can't do that, Jim. You can't do that. And without a team, Jim can't chance it, So we get one of the funniest scenes of the movie right after one of the funniest scenes in the movie. And that's kind of how this movie is. So
absolutely.
Mac,
I'm glad we agree on this. I'm glad you framed that as we get one of the funniest scenes at the movie, because this is another one of the scenes where I just was like, oh my God, this is the greatest.
Anytime that Macgruber loses his mind, loses his shit, and like he sheds his his ego. This is what, he experiences ego death right in front of us. This is the best stuff in the movie. So yes. he begs Piper to join the team after telling him, no, you can't join the team, and then killing all of his members. He's a fucking asshole. And he offers to suck Piper's dick or fuck him or let him fuck him, right?
Or watch me fuck whatever you want.
Or watch him fuck something. And basically this scene, kind of culminates with two things. One, Macgruber screaming, just tell me what you want me to fuck, like that, which is awesome, which they cut away to Piper, and they cut back, and then he's naked from the waist down, bending over.
Yes.
And he's like, and he's talking about what in the office would work best for lube. White out, copy toner, something like that, right? So
printer toner. What do we got? Do we got white out, printer toner? That could work as lube.
So,
but he's like crying, he's in tears. He's talking about getting fucked using printer toner as lube. You'd like talk about your ego failure and ego shattering, like rock bottom. This is it. This is rock bottom.
So Macgruber crumbles to the floor, and Piper learns why he hates Kunt so much. He says that Kunt killed Macgruber's wife, and Jim walks in on this, and Macgruber's just laying on the floor with his pants down, and everyone acts embarrassed. Like Jim walks in like he just caught him jerking off or something like that, and everyone's like, oh God. And so Macgruber grabs his radio and goes to leave, but Piper stops him, and he says, I'm joining the team. And Jim says they need 3 people for a team, and suddenly, just on cue, Vicky St. Elmo's Fire or whatever, she arrives on cue and joins the team too. So now they have 3 people, and I think she even sings like I'm here too or something like that.
I think so. Yes, makes 3 or something. I don't. It's yes, whatever. But again, she's the songwriter of the group, I guess. Oh.
Yes, so we got another team already. Macgruber's ready to go, and we cut to Las Vegas. The team pulls up to a club. Oh yeah, because they learn that Dieter von Kunt is going to be at this thing. I don't know. They know he hangs out at this club, so they're going to this club.
Yeah, he owns the club, right?
Right, there you go. Thank you. And let's see here. And they pull up to the club. Piper is riding on the center console of the Miata, which is a 2-seater. So, and Macgruber's plan is to go fuck up shit and to get cunt. I mean, that's it. He's going to fuck shit up, and that's going to get cunt. Now, here's the other key part of the plot is that Dieter von Kunt doesn't know that Macgruber's alive. So, many times characters are like, oh, this is our chance to get him. He doesn't know you're alive. And so Macgruber blows all that, of course, immediately, because we get the setup for the funniest joke in the movie, though, right here. Is
God, that I'm so glad that we're on the same fucking page. Yeah, I can't tell you how much you just said sets you up for the funniest joke of the movie. I've never felt closer to you than I do in this moment right now. And I'm sorry for hijacking the show just to tell you that, but the fact that you were just hitting everything that like really spoke to me is okay. Sorry, go ahead.
What happens? Tell me what is the setup for the best joke in the movie?
A guy drives by and makes fun of the Miata. And calls what does he say? What does he call him? He's like idiot or something. Douchebag, yeah, something, and drives away. And Macgruber focuses on the guy's license plate, KFBR 392, KFBR 392, KFBR 392, to memorize it. And then Piper's talking to him, KFBR 392, and then Macgruber responds to him a couple of times, KFBR 392, just committing that license plate to memory, KFBR 392, KFBR 392. And then they eventually get out of the car, and the other car, the jerk guy, drove off. And at this point that he's committed this license plate to memory, and that really, really, really bothered him that this guy insulted his Miata in front of his team, right? Like, it goes to show that like how small of a man he is that this is gonna build to something based off of the movie you're watching, right? At this point, that this is gonna build to something.
They don't drop things in this movie. That's another. It's a well-made movie. There's not just shit that gets dropped. Everything comes back. Everything,
Exactly.
It's funny too because he seems psychotic about this, and they look at him like you're fucking crazy for doing that, just for repeating that over and over again. And maybe he is. We'll find out later.
It's like Laces Out from Ace Ventura, almost. Like that's the feeling you're getting.
Yes. So Macgruber walks into the bar and he just attacks a bartender and grabs a microphone and he takes.
He says, "Hey, have you heard of the X397?" Bang! It just hits the guy in the face.
Yeah, the guy's like, "What do you have?" And he just beats him up. So, and then another kind of funny joke is that Macgruber constantly makes threats that aren't threatening. For example, he takes Vicky hostage here, and he says, who's on his team, and says these folks better quiet down or he's going to kill her. And then he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to kill her at all. Actually, she's with me." He says he's Macgruber and he's going to kill Kunth on this microphone. So he's blown his cover. And you see, Dixon Dixon Piper, he's rolling his eyes, because he knows this is an idiotic thing to do. And he gives an address to this crowd where he will be at a certain time the next day. And he ends this up by saying, "So please spread the word, you freaking turds." And we learned that Mac has no plan at all. He just kind of makes it up as he goes. So.
Yep.
Because Piper's like, "What's your plan?" And he goes, doesn't have one.
I kind of just make it up. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a plan at all. Yeah.
Now
fine.
we are transported to Dieter von Kunth's artistic side. Can you tell me a little bit about what he likes to do in his free time?
Yeah, he's painting, and there is a naked, what would you say, 80-year-old woman, 70, 80-year-old woman sitting there, just topless and just boobs out, and he's painting. And first off, his painting doesn't look anything like this woman. It's just a bunch of colors. I think he does have some boobs on there, but he's painting, and it's no one's saying shit. It's just this. That's why the scene is brilliant, because this is not out of the ordinary for Kunth. He is painting an 80-year-old nude woman. And that's when his henchman Constantine walks in and says, "Oh, yeah, we had this guy, somebody cause a scene at your nightclub last night." And Dieter von Kunth's kind of like, "Well, yeah, okay, well, some guy named Macgruber." And that's when his ears perk up. Mm-hmm. And that's when you really know that. I mean, obviously you knew before, but now Kumpf knows that Macgruber's alive.
But Kuntz is he doesn't want them to underestimate Macgruber.
Yeah.
You know, he believes that Macgruber is a danger because he says do you remember the assassination of Jimmy Carter? And Constantine's like, no. He's like, well, Macgruber stopped it, you know. So apparently Macgruber has done some things, you know. And
he said, why didn't you stop him? Why didn't you kill him?
Right.
And he said, honestly, we thought he was mentally handicapped. And because they've got a bunch of pictures from the surveillance footage, and it's Macgruber just screaming at the surveillance camera, and then one of them flipping it off with gritted teeth, just
It's a crazy person.
Just an absolute fucking batshit person, just obsessed with killing Kuntz. And Kuntz says, well, keep an eye out for him, and puts the surveillance photo of Macgruber on the easel and paints a red X over the image of Macgruber flipping him off.
Yeah, he orders the hit, you know,
Yep.
And we also failed to mention before that that in the time the past 10 years, Dieter von Kuntz has become a kind of like a good guy in the terms of everyone thinks that he's just some like, you know, very successful businessman that only does good things. So Macgruber walking in and accusing Kuntz of all this shit, of having an X5 rocket and stuff, is just ludicrous to most people. So, you know, of course they thought he was an idiot. And we cut to another ridiculous scene. Oh, my God. So, you know, they're preparing for their plan because remember Macgruber basically said, well, tell Dieter von Kuntz that I'll be at this place at this time. And it's like a little coffee shop, right? So we see Vicky is dressed up like Macgruber. Why? So stupid.
It's such a good scene. Like even the build where the reveal that she's dressed up as him, and he's like, yeah, Kuntz won't even get near you, or Kuntz won't lay a finger on you. And then he says he'll get dangerously close to you maybe, but he won't lay a finger on you. And she's in this coffee shop dressed as Macgruber for reasons we don't know. Piper and Macgruber are in a surveillance van a few blocks away, but really it turns out like he's like, we'll be right there. We're right here for you. Only 7 blocks away. And Vicky's like, what? and then he goes, I'm sorry, you got me. 22 blocks away. We're just 22 short blocks away.
And Piper says, well, there were plenty of spaces. He goes, with meters. He didn't want to pay for the parking.
Yes. But Vicky's talking into this camera that they've set up in the coffee shop and also through the wire that she has. And Macgruber is leading her to act like Macgruber. Hey, what would WWMD? What would Macgruber do?
It's bizarre. I mean, his plan makes no sense, but basically he's using her as bait to piss off Kuntz. You know, and like his whole thing with these plans are, you know, like, oh, then what are they going to do when they find out it's not me? They're going to be so mad. And it's like he's just playing stupid pranks on them when really he should be trying to kill them or capture them. So we get this setup here, which is a very unique setup where you say, you know, the two guys are in a van down the street and Vicky is dressed as Macgruber in a coffee shop, having a conversation with herself, seemingly, because she is talking out loud through the earpiece, and everyone in the coffee shop notices that she's acting insane, right?
Yes.
And this is probably Kristen Wiig's best scene in the movie. She's awesome in this.
Yes.
You know, but basically she has to follow Macgruber's orders and ends up acting completely insane. Like, for example, she orders a latte mocha or some shit, and he's like, oh, no, Macgruber would never order that. She's like, whoa. So her excitement in her voice kind of mirrors whatever Macgruber says. So if Macgruber is like all fired up, she's just yelling, you know, and this poor guy that's just taking her order is like, oh my God. He does a good job just standing there looking pissed. And like, for example, she tips and Macgruber's like, oh, I would never tip. So she digs the tip out slowly, just staring at the clerk, right?
So awkward. Just like, she's like, sorry.
So suddenly Kuntz stooges, they start shooting up the van. Was it one of them? They start shooting up the van. And so while that's happening, Vicky is just screaming and rolling around on the ground in the middle of this place. It's hard to describe this in a way that is doing it any kind of justice.
Yeah, she's just flailing on the ground, going, "Oh God, no! Oh God!" And because all she's hearing is what it sounds like her team dying and gunshots, which have to be loud, because Macgruber's also screaming bloody murder, like, "Oh my God! Oh my God! I'm gonna die!" In the van.
Well, and then we get to see Macgruber be a little bit competent because he uses an Incredimop. He's hand me that Incredimop to steer the van and is able to kill the goon whose name is Hossbender, which is a hilarious shitty name. So we see that Mac does have some, he has some things he can do. I really like that scene. When I think of this movie, a lot of times that's the scene I think of, just because I think Kristen Wigg was so funny in it, and her freaking out and then going silent, and everyone's just staring at her. And then she goes, It's okay, they're going to be alive. Well, they don't hear the other end of this conversation, so it's a really unique comedy premise, and I think they did a good job with it. So
I absolutely agree.
Okay, so here we are. All right, so they meet back up. And they get into the goon's car, right? And they find the money to buy the launch codes. So they're doing some shit, They go to the meetup, all right? But this time, Vicky is dressed up like Hossbender. I don't know why. So this time, Mac's plan is to dress Vicky up and use her as bait again, dress her up like Hossbender, right? And this is where we learn that there's a difference between winging it and then just seeing what happens. It's a little different, right? So,
yes.
We also learned that Mac doesn't use guns, all right? As, he digs through a trash can collecting items, trying to, make a distraction or something like that. So because what happens is that Vicky walks into this meetup, and, she doesn't even get 1 second in, and somebody goes, "That's not fucking Hossbender," and they all at her, right?
It's so good. That's what I'm talking about, the nuance again, because he's so convinced this disguise is gonna work, and it's like she has put her toe into the door, and they're like, "That's not Haas," and they just start shooting at her.
Well, also, what's the point? The Piper's like, "So what is this gonna do?" And he's like, "Oh, they're gonna be so mad they won't know what to do." And he's like, "So what?" It's like, what does that do for them? Nothing, So, and then most people watching this movie on a surface level, this will be the scene that they remember because, Macgruber uses a unique distraction to kind of help them, get through this situation. Do you remember what this distraction was here, Travis?
Yes. And Piper was dressed as Macgruber for no reason because
right.
Macgruber had to do this distraction, which is he does a penguin walk. There's guards, and he does a penguin walk, and you just see him, waddling out. And first, it pans up slowly. He's barefoot, but actually, no, he's butt ass naked, and he's covering his junk with one hand. And lo and behold, this piece of celery that he pulled out amongst his trinkets from the trash is lodged firmly inside of his butt, and he is just motioning around, and the guards are like, "What in the fuck is this?" Piper is like, "What in the fuck is this?" So much that Macgruber has to say, "Shoot him now, get him." And the plan works. The distraction works, even though it was a stalk of celery up his ass.
And then Macgruber brags about killing the bad guys. He's like, "Do you see all those bad guys I killed?" Piper's like, "I shot him." He's like, "Yeah, but I did the celery thing, and he also gives Piper tips on the celery thing on how to do it if he ever needs to, don't use that end, use the other end, and Piper says, "I will never do that," of course. And Vicky enters. So Vicky enters after that, and the bad guys immediately recognize it's not Hossbender. They start shooting. Vicky flees, and Macgruber struggles to make a homemade grenade while this is all going on, and he has to use Piper's gun to stir the grenade mixture.
Yes.
I need something to stir this. Let me see your gun. And it's basically an ineffective tennis ball bomb. I have a real quick story to tell, Travis. I knew a psychotic kid when I was younger. This kid was into weapons big time, and he would often invent weapons, whether that was like taping a knife to a stick or, I don't know, taping a knife to a gun or something. This kid always had some new weapon, and he invented one of the most dangerous things I've ever heard of. Have you ever used strike anywhere matches? Are you familiar with these?
Yes, I have. Yes.
You can strike them anywhere. You can strike them on your teeth. You can strike them on your foot, and they light every time. So what he'd do is he'd take a tennis ball and he would cut it open and fill it with like BBs and gunpowder and strike anywhere match tips. So you'd fill it with that, tape it together, and then you throw it, and the motherfucker would explode, and it was the most dangerous thing ever. So that's who I grew up with. But much like I did when I saw that, Vicky has peed her jeans too. She peed them. She says she peed them.
I peed him. And her mustaches. This is, again, like, if you haven't decided, if you haven't watched this movie, or you did and you, like me, didn't like it at first, go back and rewatch it, because we're even leaving out more nuanced things. Like, the mustache is hanging off. Her disguised mustache is hanging off. When she fled, it was hilarious. It's just there's just a scene of her running out of the door, like it's dead quiet, and she just goes, ah! It's still hilarious. So we're even leaving stuff out, even though it feels like we're being super thorough. We're leaving stuff out.
Yeah, and this is going to probably be like 2 hours long or something like that, and we're still going to miss all kinds of stuff. So, and that's what's great. That's a great comedy. It bears repeating. You can watch it over and over and pick up other things. That's what great comedies do. So, all right, so after this, they try to trace a call, right? So Kunth calls Macgruber, or Macgruber calls him. I can't remember. And Macgruber immediately botches it, because they say, now remember, you got to keep him on the line for like 10 seconds, and he just starts yelling obscenities. so Kunth hangs up on him, right? So then Jim calls, and tells Mac about the fundraiser that Kunth will be at. But he says, now don't show up there, because, our ace in the hole is that Kunth doesn't know that you're dead, or that you're alive. And Macgruber's like, oh, yeah, absolutely. He sure doesn't know. And he says, we definitely will not go. And then he hangs up and says, we're definitely going to that, right? All right. So this is another really fun scene. We're in Salt Lake City at this fundraiser. This is a fundraiser for, some kind of, charity. Okay. So there's just a bunch of normal people there that, they're rich, but it's just normal people in a really nice house. And Macgruber arrives in a white suit with these sunglasses with leather around them to, block out the sun on the right and left side. He looks absolutely ridiculous. And he walks in slow motion, and the doorman's like, do you have, and he just flips the doorman off, as he walks by into the party, and Take Me Home Tonight plays. And it's fucking awesome. The way they shot this reminds me of movies where there's a prom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the kid showing up at the prom, and that's what it's like, right?
Absolutely.
It's pretty good. So he flips off the doorman, and then Macgruber executes an upper decker while Piper looks through Mac's notebook of clues. Now, which thing would you like to describe? What an upper decker is, or the notebook of clues?
Notebook of clues.
Okay, so I'll tell it real quick. An upper decker, Mac explains, is when you poop into the tank and not into the bowl. So first thing he does is flip off a doorman and walk upstairs and poop in the tank. So now when Piper's looking through this notebook, it says book of clues. It says clues on it, and then fill me in on the rest of this here.
The first page is. It just says, because obviously I remember everything after this more, but it says clues or ideas, and it just is an unfinished list of just one thing. So he has written nothing down. He has no ideas. He has no next steps. And then as Piper flips through, you start to see, here we are, KFBR 392 written over and over again. And as he's flipping the pages, this is getting progressively worse, and the music's starting to get sinister, and it's just like, And when I'm talking at first, it's just like he's written it once, right? And then the next couple of pages, he's starting to write it obsessively, and it's just like line after line, KFBR 392, KFBR 392. And then he starts to flip the pages, and there's just one single letter, KFBR 392. Now that's 7 different pages, and in the background of each K, there's KFBR 392 right now.
And some of the single letters are made out of little tiny, written KFRB or whatever it is. So that's funny. What else?
Then he flips to a page of Macgruber hanging over the gentleman that called him a douchebag, and he is pooping on the gentleman. And the guy's looking up, and I think the guy's just standing there on this one, and he's just getting poop on him. And Macgruber, and it's just, and the music the whole time's getting more sinister. It's just going, and then he flips one more page, and this time, instead of pooping on the gentleman, Macgruber is still hanging up on a tree branch or a wire. And not only is Macgruber pooping, and yes, the gentleman has his face up this time and his mouth open, but Macgruber's also peeing. So it's showing poop and pee falling from the sky, complete with Macgruber's dick, for sure, drawn dick. And it's just poop and pee raining down on this gentleman, the driver of KFBR 392. And it ends in like, and Piper closes the notebook and like shivers. And
yes. The punchline is that he shivers.
Yes.
It's awesome. And the music makes that, because it's just like tension, and we are learning that Macgruber is fucking insane. So, all right. Well, back inside, and that's a rule of threes joke. So that's number 2. So we're going to get to number 3 here at some point. Okay, so Macgruber is inside and he sees Vicky dressed in all white, and he likes what he sees. Also, I forgot to mention earlier, when he was helping her with her Macgruber costume, and he goes, you look really pretty. He notices that she's good looking when she's dressed like him.
She's dressed as Macgruber. Yes. Again, another thing we forgot. Like, it's just, there's so many things.
So he notices again that she's pretty. And this is an awesome joke too, where she says, "Oh, see that guy over there, that really handsome guy, that's one of Kunt's goons." And Mac is like, "Oh, no, that guy, you think that guy's handsome?" He goes, "Well, I know that guy's got nothing to do with it." And there's like this really old, like, Japanese guy that's like a I don't know, he works there or something. He's trying to like pick up glasses, and he goes, "Oh, he's full of secrets. Go, you tail that guy." So because he's so insecure, he can't imagine, now that he's noticed Vicky is pretty, she must be his, and he can't imagine her even thinking about another man, right? Even though she was just describing the person.
Just go ahead. Just go quit. Yeah, are you going to go quit? Go quit. Be with them then. Go quit them. Like, and again, just showing how insecure of a human Macgruber is.
It's fantastic. So, yeah, he says that old Japanese guy, he's teeming with intel. He says, that's awesome. So, Macgruber crashes a card game, and this is Kunt and a senator, right? And that are having a card game, real intense poker game, and there's like this beautiful woman standing next to Kunt, and Kunt is basically, Macgruber says, he knows when Kunt is bluffing. So he advises the senator to go all in, and the senator loses instantly. and then he's in Kunt's pocket, which pays off later. So Macgruber's a failure immediately. And then he sexually harasses Kunt's daughter because he says, what does he say to the lady? I can't remember what he says. Do you remember?
He said, well, at this point, she's just a beautiful woman, and he's like, "You're very pretty." And it's like, "Hope you like getting date raped." And immediately Kunt goes, "That's my daughter. This is my daughter." And it just is like, it's so deadpan. It's like bing bang. He's like, "Hope you like getting date raped, or hope you're okay with getting date raped. This is my daughter." And he goes, "Oh."
And then they end up, they taunt each other. They have a really good back and forth. And that's the thing, is that Kilmer has great chemistry with Macgruber, and they do really good when they're on screen together, which isn't a whole lot in the movie, But Kunt says he doesn't know anything about a warhead, because he's just a businessman, and Mac threatens to rip Kunt's dick off and shove it in his mouth. And then the next scene, we see him getting tossed through a window outside. So.
Yes. And they break his radio.
Oh, yeah, that's my very next thing. It says, and they break his radio. That's okay. That's okay. We got to get it in. And Vicky witnesses some illegal shit going on with the senator. So she's, even though she was on this Japanese guy, she did notice the other stuff, right? Oh, my goodness. Okay. So next, Dieter von Kunthe dresses his goons down because he asks them, how did Macgruber get in? They're like, well, he just walked in the front door, and he's pissed. So he kills a guy, creating a new piece of art. You know, he has a guy stand right in front of a fucking canvas and then shoots him in the head and tells him, go hang that in the foyer to let everybody know what happens if you fuck with me, basically. So then we cut to the war room, you know, in the Pentagon, and Jim is angry at Macgruber because, you know, he wasn't supposed to go to the thing that he went to, you know, and obviously Jim knows about it because it went so poorly, you know. He takes Mac off the mission again, you know, and then Mac says, I will suck your dick, you know, and then we get that whole thing all over again.
I will let you fuck me.
You want to watch me fuck something? Oh, man. Fantastic.
Suck your dick. I will let you fuck me.
Well, that doesn't work.
He says it more commanding. Yeah, yes. It does not work.
Yeah, that's funny because he's not, you know, he's going to do whatever he wants, but he wants Jim on his side. You know what I mean? So this is more, he's more confident about it, you know, this time instead of, why do you want me to fuck? You know, so the team hangs out. And Piper asks Macgruber when he's going to make a move with Vicky. And Macgruber says, shut your butt. I don't know what you mean, you know. And Macgruber says he doesn't know why Kunt killed his wife, which is really funny because he says they went to college together. And we get this fucking hilarious scene where Kilmer's playing a guitar and they're all hanging out together and they look like, you know, blatantly they're all like 40, but they look like college students kind of. And do you remember what, like, you know, Macgruber and his ex-wife's or his dead wife's relationship was to Kunt?
Yes. Kunt and Casey, right? It was Casey. Yes. Were dating originally. And they were a friend group, but Kunt and Casey were together. And slowly but surely, I don't remember how he describes that they started fucking, but he like starts to say, he's like, yeah, we started going to Pound Town or some fucking Macgruber thing. And he says, and then we started having sex gradually, but then he turns out she was pregnant with Kunt's baby. And then she got an abortion, and then we started dating. And I don't know why Kunt hates me so much.
Well, he asked Vicky to get the abortion so they could start fresh.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yes. Well, either way, Kunt's unborn child is like the decision is completely out of his like purview because Macgruber is directing his future fiance to have an abortion.
And so it turns out that Kunt has a very good reason for blowing up the wedding. Macgruber's a dick, you know. So Macgruber, he bonds with Piper and apologizes for being an asshole. And suddenly they are Pearl Harbored, and Mac uses Piper as a human shield.
Yes. And it's great. It's great. It's a great scene. Like, it's just everything that you think. He's getting shot from the front, then he gets turned around and gets shot from the back, and he's using him as a human shield.
They get away, but when Piper realizes that Macgruber didn't know that he was wearing body armor, because he's like, how did you know I was wearing a bulletproof vest? He's like, you were? And so Piper's pissed, and he quits the team, right? So this is you know, the end of our second act, beginning our third act. You know, we got to get some heat on our protagonist here and have everything go wrong, that's kind of a, you know, a up and down story with this movie with that. But so Macgruber has been shot, right? Oh my goodness. Okay. So he gets shot and Vicky asks if she can help him, right? So he's been shot pretty much in the crotch, like right by his leg, you know, right by his dick. And there is this really gross scene that is just like, what's so funny about this is that Macgruber is the one that's being penetrated, all right? So if you want to, this is like the opposite of how it would normally be in a movie where there's some kind of, you know, like the girl with the pearl earring, you know, it's the woman having her ear pierced is like a euphemism for her losing her virginity here. Well, in this case, you know, Macgruber is being penetrated by Vicky, who's digging around in his leg with a pair of pliers, and they get hot for each other while this is going on.
Yeah, she's trying to get the bullet out of his leg with this pair of forceps, and they start talking. She says something completely obvious, like he's like, "Well, why haven't you're a virgin?" She says she's a virgin. She's like, "Well, I was waiting for this guy who then eventually got married to my best friend, or was tried to get married to my best friend, but his wife, she was killed at their wedding." And Macgruber is like, "Well, you should probably tell him how you feel." And all the while she's digging around, and she pulls out the bullet, and she goes, "Oh, there, I got the bullet." And he says, he's like, "Oh," she goes, "Oh." And it turns out Macgruber has an erection. You don't see it, but he's like, "Oh yeah, I always get hard when women are bringing forceps around my nuts." And what the fuck? And then she goes to sew that up, and he goes, "No, wait. I like holes."
He wants to leave the wound open because he likes holes. And that's Macgruber's sexy talk right there.
Yep.
All
And
right.
I guess it works.
So if you've seen the movie Top Gun, or, I don't know, any other 80s, sex scene, that's what we get here, sort of. We get a spin on that because broken wings start playing, and take these broken wings. And we get this hilarious sex scene where, it reminds me of Hot Shots a little bit, where it's like it's shot in all blue and it's actually sexy. And you see these like really hot people like, rolling around and stuff. But it's not. Then all of a sudden it cuts to Mac on top of her, just making these awful sex noises, and his sexy talk. Without getting too gross or anything, could you give me a example of something that Macgruber yells during sex?
I don't know what is too gross for you, because it's like the whole thing is just him heaving. "Hey, I'm going to shoot. I'm going to shoot. I'm going to shoot."
He spills it, he says.
"Oh, I'm spilling."
And it's awesome. I'm going to shoot. And it's so funny and uncomfortable and hilarious. This is one of those scenes that if you're watching this and you're 12 years old or something like that, you're watching this with your friend, your mom is walking in during this scene. It is happening.
Yes.
I don't care any other part of the movie. I mean, maybe one other part, but that your mom or your dad's walking in during this scene and thinking you're crazy. Absolutely. It is 100%, So he feels guilty and he runs away immediately. Like he shoots and then he runs away, and he drives to a cemetery. All right. And he just had sex with this woman. Okay. This is exactly what just happened. He drives to a cemetery and he has a vision of fucking his dead wife. Right. And because he's basically asking her permission to do this thing. He feels guilty. He wants to feel like he's made the right decision by, being with Vicky. So they make hilarious sex noises. Maya Rudolph is so funny in the scene, and she was actually pregnant.
Yes.
She was legit pregnant in real life.
Really?
Yes. So
that's hilarious. Well, because he does the same thing, except he says, "I'm going to shoot like 70 times as opposed to 30." And then he says, "I shot." And then Maya Rudolph goes, "I did too."
Yes. They have a call and response thing too. They've clearly done this before, because it's like it's like him going and her going yeah, and him going her going yeah, and it's so funny, man. They must have had so much fun doing that. Because it's just ridiculous. So they have this hilarious sex scene, but really he's just jerking off in a graveyard by fucking the air, because they cut over to this guy that's walking through the park, and he looks over at him and he's just standing there humping the air, So they shoot together, and Casey's ghost gives Macgruber permission to date Vicky. And as he leaves, I mean, you got to wrap this up for us. You started this. You went through number 2, the rule of threes. What was number 3 in the KFBR 392 joke?
He's wrapping up. He's left the cemetery. He's just had sex with his ghost wife. And guess what car is sitting in the cemetery? KFBR motherfucking 392. And then Macgruber just proceeds to do every fucking thing in the book. While who does he call? Does he call Piper? Does Piper call him? Or no, Colonel calls him.
He calls the Colonel.
Colonel calls him, and he's like keying the car, breaking out the windows, just like gonna eventually lights the car on fire. He's just like fucking wrecking this car. And it's just, again, all this started, remember, just from the douchebag comment that he was insulted by his Miata. And eventually the car owner gets there, and Macgruber runs off.
This is the happiest Macgruber is almost in the whole movie too. He is so happy. He's talking to Jim. Oh yeah, he just had sex with his ghost wife, as you said, in the graveyard. He just got laid twice in like 2 hours, or who knows how long it was. But oh my God, so funny. So Jim says they've recovered the rocket, and Kunth was not involved after all. But Macgruber doesn't believe him. He's like, that can't be right. So then we see
he says something. Does he say the smells like shit thing here too? Again, does he repeat that? He says something that it's like it's not that he doesn't believe it. I don't remember what he says, but he says that he doesn't believe it, and it's like it smells like shit or something like that. I don't remember what it is, but
we see though that Jim was being held hostage by the senator. Who is forcing him to make this call, right? To tell, Macgruber that, hey, Kunth didn't have anything to do with it. Come on in. And then we see the senator shoots Jim. So Powers Booth is now dead? ?
Yeah. Question mark is right.
Yeah. So then Macgruber is at Vicky's house, but she's been taken by Kunth. Kunth calls to tell Macgruber that he's going to kill Vicky. And Macgruber keeps Kunth on the phone long enough to trace the call because he learned his lesson. And then one of the coolest songs ever, Woman by Wolf Mother, plays as Mac gears up by stashing all kinds of normal items on his person. this like fucking badass song's playing. And he's like putting toothpicks in his pockets and shit.
So good. So good.
So he meets up with Piper, who is only helping because he's friends with Vicky. And Macgruber claims he's going to rip some throats. We've heard him mention this a couple times in the movie. We don't really know what he means by that, so we're going to find out, though. So Macgruber and Piper sneaking into Kunth's, hideout, and Mac rips his first throat. What does that mean? What do I mean by that?
It's exactly what it sounds like. You grab somebody's trachea and rip it out.
It's disgusting, right?
Like it is exactly like it's throat ripping. Yeah,
well, and he loves
exactly what it sounds like.
He's so happy. Again, if we're looking at this movie as like the hero's journey, he's died and come back. He's made a peace with the dead. He's moved on in his life relationship wise, and now he's ripping throats. This is good stuff. So Kunth, we cut to him, and he's got Vicky all tied up, and he says bad guy stuff. He makes fun of Macgruber, I'm gonna pound some Kunth, makes fun of him, and he makes her watch the State of the Union address where he's going to send the X-5 rocket. Macgruber and Piper argue over if it's "Let's go pound some Kunth" or if that's a good catchphrase, which it absolutely is, right?
100% is.
Right. So Macgruber rips another throat. And his hand's kind of itchy, He says he's going for a turkey, and Macgruber and Piper's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, it's like in bowling. In bowling you get 3 strikes. That's called a turkey. So in this case, it's ripping throats, though. So if I get a third one, that's a turkey." So Macgruber gets on the PA system again. He does not like the element of surprise. He likes to fuck that up every time. So he gets on the PA system and talks shit to Kunth. The goons head for the control room, and they enter to a goofy stunt by Mac. He has like a little cup of water over the thing and just kind of falls on their head or whatever. And we get gunfighting while Vicky tries to get loose. Macgruber learns to use a gun. Can you tell me about this?
Yeah, I don't know how best to explain how he shoots a gun other than it looks like Team America shooting, like puppet shooting. It's the best way that I can describe it, because he's just like, his hands are bobbing up and down. There's no way he's hitting anything, and he's just shooting and missing everything. He's basically a stormtrooper, and it's so funny because he's just going, and it's not even that they're away from him. It's not like they're too powerful. He is just like gesturing up and down and not shooting in any direction really. He's just shooting, but he thinks he's doing amazing.
Well, and he's terrified too. We learned that he didn't learn to use a gun because he doesn't use guns because he doesn't know how. So, so basically while he's, just laying down cover fire by just waving the guns in the air and shooting whatever, Piper's taking out all these targets. And so Macgruber is like, man, guns are way better than my stupid invention. Like, why have I been doing this whole time? So that's funny. And then Macgruber jumps in front of Piper to save him, but the goons gun jam. So they bond again over that, and Macgruber gets a turkey. And, it's great, too, because, Piper was going to kill the guy, and he's like, you really want that turkey, don't you? And Macgruber, he gives them the turkey to him. Pretty nice moment there. So then they all get captured.
Yeah.
So Kuntz acknowledges the upper decker. He's like, thank you for the upper decker. That's funny. We get the classic bad guy explains his evil plan scene. He's working for the Chinese and is planning on framing them for all this stuff. And he has a fake manifesto called Fuck You, America by Macgruber. He's framing Macgruber. That's what it is. So he's framing Macgruber for all this, right? But yeah, the manifesto is like this big written thing with a notebook. It says "Fuck You, America" by Macgruber. We get a ticking clock with the rocket armed. Kuntz starts torturing Macgruber by cutting his mullet, which this infuriates Macgruber to the point where he just rips two throats. And a goon's about to kill him, but Piper says, "Hey!" And we pan down, and what do we see?
Piper has used Macgruber's greatest tactic, and he learned from his friend or brother. And guess what? Piper's now butt-ass naked, holding his junk with a stalk of celery up his ass and doing the little shuffle. And everyone's like, what? And that leaves the opening for Macgruber. Or does Vicky escape? Is that when Vicky escapes?
This is when Vicky performs the most beautiful spinning kick you will ever see in the world, like on the main goon, and then Macgruber handcuffs Kuntz to some like tank thing that's in there.
Yes.
And now we get the SNL sketch, and this is when the audience is supposed to realize that this is a prequel to the SNL skits. This is how we got to where we are in those. So, this movie is well made. It has story stuff. This is it. And we get the SNL sketch where it's like, Macgruber asks for everyday items and makes, he's supposed to be disarming the bomb, but he makes an engagement ring for Vicky and proposes. And she says, yes, let's defuse the bomb. Who cares about that? So, but he can't defuse the warhead. And Kuntz is like gloating, like, oh, this is awesome. You're all going to die. So he takes all of the guts instead and sets it to self-destruct. They jump away from the building just in time to not die, and we hear that Bobcat sound again from the beginning during the explosion.
Bobcat counter.
It's awesome. And then we get a denouement. So that's the end of the movie until we get our little denouement or after scene here, and Mac and Vicky are getting married. Jim's there. So he's not dead. He lived, which is great. They didn't just leave that hanging like they would in other movies. Vicky sings, I do. This is funny. And we see
it's so good.
We see a scarred Vitor Don Kuntz approach, and he shoots a rocket launcher. All right, it's a direct hit on the priest, killing him immediately and sending blood all over the place. We hear the Bobcat sound again. So, and then Macgruber straight up beats the fuck out of Kuntz. All right, Macgruber goes to make Kuntz suck his own dick, but Kuntz is like, oh, I'd love to see you try. It turns off his dick was blown off in the explosion. So Macgruber is infuriated. So he throws Kuntz off a cliff, shooting him as he falls, exclaiming, fuck you, dude! And he shoots a grenade and pisses on Kuntz's body, like all in one, like smooth motion.
Yeah, it's like the perfect way to end the film. I mean, what better way to end this film than, and he's free falling, getting shot. He hits the ground, blood everywhere, shoots the grenade, and then just unloads like he's been waiting to pee all day, over this cliff, and it lands on him. Just perfect. And
then he says, I do,
so he says, I do. Yes.
So
Chef's kiss. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Man, fucking amazing. And then we get credits. And they have funny pictures from the wedding, and we get a post-credit scene where Macgruber plays saxophone, and that's it. I fucking love this movie. I love it even more after talking about it in detail. It makes me want to watch it again and again. Travis, what are your closing thoughts on Macgruber?
I just have to go back and say that there was so much nuance to all of this, like, overblown pee-pee poo-poo explosion humor. Like, you really have to go back and see it. I'm telling you, we left so much stuff out. For instance, it's like go back to the scene where they try to get they sell the codes where Vicky's dressed up as like Hoss. And when he actually bites and takes a bite of the celery stalk that was in his ass. Yes. And it's like a quick cut. And she's just like, was that, she goes, ew. And he goes, I washed it. And he looks at Piper and goes, I didn't. and just even like stupid things, like even right when she's about to go trace the call for the first time, when he yells "fuck you, cunt," and cunt hangs up on him so they can't trace it, she like says some weird catchphrase where she's like, "we're ready to roll, Macgruber," or something. And it's just like such a callback to those kind of things. And I'm just telling you, there's so much wrapped up into this movie. It really truly is a phenomenal movie. It is so funny, and I can't tell you enough. If you have not seen it, go watch it. If you're a fan of action movies, go watch it. You have to. And if you watched it when you were younger, do the right thing. Go back, right that wrong if it wasn't one of your faves, because it really has turned into one of mine, because it's so dumb that it's smart. It really is.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, everything you're saying, I agree with. I mean, we said at the beginning, but if you like this, definitely go back and watch Last Man on Earth. That's a fantastic movie where basically it's just Macgruber, but he isn't like an action hero. He's just a normal dude. So it's like the same exact character, though. And, I've loved this movie forever. I'm so glad that we got to do it for the show, because, I've watched movies like this many times and thought, man, I sure would. I wish I had a movie review podcast where I could just talk about this stuff. And of course, instead of making a movie review podcast, I have to figure out a way to make the movie go on my wrestling podcast, which I don't know why I have to make this life so difficult like that. But I'm so glad we got to cover it, because again, like you said at the very beginning, I was sitting there like in the shower or something like that, and I'm like, hey, I've watched Macgruber a million times, and there's wrestlers in that. How am I just remembering this? Like, I've been thinking about obscure movies to do. Like, there's a weird TV show with Goldberg it's called it's about knives, and Goldberg's the host, and it's like a reality show. It's fucking terrible. And I was thinking, like, that's something no one would ever view.
Oh man, you have accidentally stumbled upon an idea that I had for my show. We're talking about Goldberg's knife show. We'll have to talk about it later. Okay. But you exactly.
I've watched almost all the episodes in preparation for doing an episode one day, but no one else felt interested in it. So, for understandable reasons. But, I've been trying to pick through, and find these kind of hidden gems and stuff. Meanwhile, this was staring me right in the face. One more thing before we cut out too, I just want to mention that, the notes that I took were on the unrated version, which has I think 10 extra minutes of jokes pretty much, maybe 5-10 minutes. And there is a theatrical version. Will Forte himself says he'd rather you watch the theatrical version. However, there are a couple extra funny jokes, like I said, in the unrated one. There's a chance he's never watched the unrated one, So anyway, but man, I highly recommend, folks, if you like what our banter, me and Travis, you're gonna find that every Friday at the butt crack of dawn in the morning. Those episodes come out, and that's the Wrestle Special, and that's available on every podcast app, including the one that you're listening to this to right now. Leave him a review. Go listen to his show. It's fantastic, and I've been on a couple times now, and it's always a pleasure to have Travis on. Me and Travis are podcast like soulmates or something like that, but we don't have a podcast together, and one day we got to fix that, because there's so much untapped stuff going on here, and I'm glad that we're starting to let that trickle out a little bit, because I remember one of the first times I ever had a conversation with you, I remember thinking, man, that was easy. And, and that's kind of how I always think about when I podcast with you. I always think, man, that was so easy. That felt great, and that's how it always is. So I appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you as always, brother. I'll come back on anytime.
Awesome. Well, you can follow the Wrestle Special at Wrestle Special on Twitter and the Wrestle Special on Instagram. I'm pretty sure I got that right. You can follow us
yeah,
I know what I'm doing. So I'm a pro. And you can follow the Road Home from Wrestling at the Road Home FW. Just a reminder, we do have fanny packs now, and they are guaranteed to hold at least 2,000 somas. So that's very important for all the pro wrestlers listening out there. It is a place you can keep your somas and other stuff. You could probably fit a copy of Macgruber in there as well, which, maybe I'll do that and make another silly video like I made. So anyway, well, I appreciate it. Thanks again, Travis. So for me, my guest, Travis, and for the greatest American hero, Macgruber, thank you so much for listening.